Yeah, yeah. Give me.
Feel comfortable, like why you look like Tom Hanks from Philadelphia? I don't know.
I've heard a lot, but I haven't heard that one yet.
Oh, so, yeah, that was a good one.
I've heard a lot. That was. I never saw that movie, but
yeah, I don't think many people did. Yeah,
I don't. Dark. Yeah, there was a timeline when there was a lot of dark movies coming out. I guess they still do come out. I mean, I was kind of tripping out on this Stranger Things partnership with Domino's Pizza, right? Like here, this like Stranger Things 4 is like highly prominent on like children dying, and they partner with a pizza company for like an R-rated type of horror movie, And I think if I was a kid, like that would make as much sense as Pizza Hut partnering with like Friday the 13th or Freddy Krueger, It just just shows you how times have changed, right?
Right. Yeah. That's really funny. I was watching this old TV show that launched called American Horror Story back in 2011.
Oh, yeah, they're still making them.
I can't believe that. I mean, watching the writing in 2011 it's like, that was horrifying. That was more horrifying than the horror story.
Yeah.
The scene, oh my God. And you're like, how did this go on for another 10 years?
Yeah. Well, they're still pumping them out. Now they're doing like vignettes, and I've never even seen one, but I haven't seen a lot of things. I don't watch a lot of content unless it's like weird subculture documentaries on how 2-ply toilet paper is made. So I can tell you about that. All right. Well, I want to go ahead and get it started. Before we jump in, Jorgensen, I always, since, you're the fearless leader and my business partner, I want to give you a chance if you want to say anything or if you want me to just dive in.
No, man, not today. This is all you, buddy.
All right. Clear my throat there. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Great. Hello, everybody. My name is Benjamin Diggles. I am the head of business development and co-founder of Constellation Network. As you can see, I've got a new cut to celebrate the new beginnings, Constellation 2.0. Even though, as I thought about it, this is kind of Constellation 3.0 because I look back on Constellation Labs, which is where we really started. Then we got to Mainnet 1, and now we're going to Mainnet 2. But for all intents and purposes, we'll call it Constellation 2.0. So got a fresh cut here for new beginnings, and I'm really excited today. I know a lot of people have been in many ways on bated breath and pent up to understand a little bit of what's going on and have some more concrete dates. And today you're going to get your fill. So let's dive in. So here's today's agenda. The first 5 bullets you're looking at here are really predicated around the DOD. Those that probably know, we do have a contract with the U.S. Air Force. We've been active with them for over 3 years now, and I've been spearheading that effort. And so the second chunk there after those dotted lines there is the new website brand reveal and some of those updates and timelines that everybody's excited about. So if you're here for that last slide, you're going to have to sit through this DOD stuff, but hopefully you find it foundational as to why it culminates to that last slide. So looking at these bullets, the first one, overview of the active phase 2 contracts. I will say there was a moment in the community, and I don't know who this gentleman or gal's name is, so I want to apologize, but I was saying, hey, it's been a really great day of briefing generals. And they're like, can we see the briefing? I was like, are you a general? So a little tongue in cheek there. Wasn't trying to be a jerk, but the point is we can't really showcase a lot of this just off the cuff. That said, I did want to pull together the briefing I have been showing, and I did, redact some stuff that I can't share, but you can kind of get a flavor of how we've been presenting this and why it matters. Very proud. We've touched on the Universal Blockchain Toolkit, so I want to give an update on where that's headed and how the phase 3 transition looks, and what that growing federal team that is focused on supporting the Universal Blockchain Toolkit It's funny I put UBK, it should be UBT. Vision. Going to touch on a couple of notable events Constellation is involved in. We're involved in a lot, but these are ones that I'm very proud of. And then I just want to have a clean level set. What is this, or what this is and what this isn't? So there's clarity about how we fit into this federal, I guess, lens, and how we see the world through our ecosystem, including this federal initiative. So that being said, let's dive in. So this is the actual slide deck. I'm actually using PowerPoint. That kind of gives you an idea, since the government loves PowerPoint. So this is the actual briefing that I've been using, and it has been seen by literally hundreds. I can actively say hundreds of military personnel have seen this. I've briefed them on this presentation, and I couldn't be more proud. Our code name is Iron Spider. It's kind of cheesy, but it stands for Secure Peer-to-Peer and Immutable Data Resilience. Really, when we start thinking about mesh networks, data fabrics, the ability to create true decentralization. I mean, that's really what that means. And of course, we have our subcontracting partner that has joined us at the hip on this. Kinemy is involved in this effort as well. And so that's why their logo is present on this slide. So here's the overview of the phase 2 contract. Again, some of these sections may seem a little anemic because I've pulled certain things, but that said, this is really where I kick it off. And why I really like this, you don't even have to go through that entire paragraph on the left. Securing legacy and future command and control mission planning systems data exchanges with their commercial partners. And that data exchange is really kind of the crux of this, right? They want to be able to really seamlessly, if you think about multi-domain or multi-constituents, exchange data, even down to machine, knowing that it's accurate, zero trust type of stuff, right? That it has been validated, it has fidelity, it hasn't been spoofed, which opens up a whole lot of use cases. And so while we have that kind of cool, Iron Spider name, really the contract title is end-to-end data security using blockchain encryption and hosting decentralization. And this is a 13-month period of performance. Happy to say, as of tomorrow, we're kicking off our last month, and I couldn't be more proud. So why this matters, we've talked a little bit about how some of these executive orders have come out. This isn't just us, because we did win a direct to phase 2, which meant we didn't go to them with a needs statement that they had posted up on their contracting portals, but rather went to them and said, hey, you may not really know this stuff, but we know you need this stuff. So how can we educate you? And after multiple attempts of getting their attention, we finally secured that direct to phase 2. And now it's maturing rapidly, right? When we started this 3 years ago, it went from a nice to have. Now we're hearing directly from the Secretary of Defense Office that this is mission critical. From the Civil Reserve Air Fleet partners, this is mission critical. The ship has sailed, right? And so when we look at all these deposits from our capital, if you look over in the right there, I certainly am not ever trying to lead with fear or trying to beat the competition, but it's sort of important when we're talking about what's going on with adversaries, IP, security threats, and so forth. China has been quietly building a blockchain platform. It's called Blockchain-Based Service Network. And this is important because it not only dips into the commercial side where commercial folks can use it, but it's highly tied to their government entity, which means that if we're not competing in this paradigm, we're going to, in lack of a better term, get our asses handed to us, right? And so this is some of the stuff that we would surface. And I see the joint group that has been working on this contract to really educate folks of why this is starting to become really important now. And we've covered this at length, so I'm not really going to go in detail about this. It's not profound. Multi-domain or joint all-domain is not a whole lot different than supply chain management, right? You can go ahead and just, use that use case of supply chain management and copy it over to this multi-domain, such as food trust. Imagine there's E. coli breakout that's in one sector that's now feeding out, and by 3 days goes by, you have a bunch of people that are sick. The same thing could happen with the security threat, right? You get bad data that gets into a node or gets into one of the hands of one of the different folks or agencies. Now you have that bleeding into areas that could cause a lot of problems. And it's much more robust than that, but that kind of gives some basics of what JADC2 really is. But the biggest profound thing, which is actually not profound for being somebody that's in as much data as I am, is that just central systems are too expensive and not fast enough to process this stuff anymore, right? Like, sort of makes sense. Like, if you have to use centralized servers, and we've talked about with autonomous driving, you have a car on the road that needs to ping, LiDAR or camera data up to the cloud through a 4 or 5G network, gets validated and approved by a central authority, comes back down to the car, everybody's dead, there's problems, right? This is why edge networks are becoming so important. But how do you really ensure the fidelity and the security or the standards around the core network that facilitates that peer-to-peer exchange, right? And so again, the ship has sailed. This is a slide when I'm meeting with generals I don't have to spend a lot of time on, because it's like kind of twisting the knife, right? Being like, hey, you guys kind of have some issues. Like, we know we have issues, right? And the organization interoperability is paramount. Like, that third bullet is probably the most important. That's why when we're talking about sending data from the mothership to a commercial reserve air fleet partner, they got to make sure in that porous environment that security is being handled in very contested environments. And we saw this in August of 2021, when there was that sort of meltdown with Afghanistan. And I've had to catch myself a few times when doing these briefings, because they're like, oh, this is a great example. And it's like, well, I don't really think they think it's great, but it does highlight, so I had to like tune my words a little bit. But it shows, like, if you look at the top right-hand corner there, there's craft partners involved. And I'm not sure if people remember that. If you want to look up what took place on that day, it was a communication meltdown. To this day, they don't really know the numbers and so forth of what took place. Excuse me. Had they had this stuff on an immutable ledger, then would it have solved everything? No, but it would have solved a lot of stuff. And forensically, they would have been able to know what's going on in the moment with true fidelity and accuracy. But that said, we also like to let the government know that, hey, Constellation isn't the first. There's others that have been in front of us. And this has been one of the big reasons why we've had issues really getting the attention of some of these operators and end users, as well as some of those generals, is because they all say, well, wait a minute, didn't we do something with IBM and it didn't really like kind of shake out? And in their mind, kind of like the saying goes, no one gets fired for buying IBM or choosing IBM. They think if IBM couldn't do it, then there certainly was not anything there. And the good news is IBM stuff is actually being used in a commercial aspect within the federal environment with Maersk and their trade lens solution, but it was not fast enough for them to dip into US Air Force mission control data, bulk data, right? It's just not fast enough. We've seen stuff from Walmart, of course, our friends over at Simba Chain. That said, really getting after US Air Force data has been kind of the net new frontier. And so I like to educate them on how we're different, but I don't like to go too deep, because you start getting into double nested consensus, algorithms, they don't know what you're talking about. But folks do need to understand that blockchain is not Bitcoin, right? Like, and a lot of these folks, that's what they believe. And that we are a third generation blockchain solution that is well beyond the capabilities and limitations of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and some of those Linux solutions that we covered with Ledger. The ease of integration, as we talked about, this has been really fun to watch, because, in a way, I was sort of writing checks that I had to make sure my ass could cash when it came to the true promise of our technology, because some of this stuff we haven't done before. And sure enough, for us to be able to integrate cost effectively has been really delightful to share to them, because they do a thing called a random order of magnitude, trying to understand what does it cost to absorb this, operate it, because there's been a lot of scenarios in which they get hooked on a technology to find out that its cost to operate and absorb it is far beyond the benefit that it creates. With ours, since they are looking at not only deploying their own HTTP instance internally, but multiple HTTP instances and multiple state channels, we're not a middleman. They can do it however they want, and they don't have to remove those investments they've made from some of these VM providers and cloud providers. I always say, instead of having one host that's $1,000 running your central service, and the decentralized, you have 100, at $100 or whatever, $10. That's actually right math. 100 at $10. And it's just tuning their existing investments to absorb this, versus having to learn how to write something in Solidity and train new people and invest in new hardware or any of that sort of stuff, right? Excuse me, 1 minute. The other thing is that they wanted to make sure we weren't nuking the planet. Everybody sees Bitcoin as something that's causing a problem with, our environment for obvious reasons. So that's why I slapped that tweet over to the right, because I'm, very proud that, like, hey, we're potentially one of the most energy efficient networks out there. And we've seen that when we showed that 80,000 transaction running on 2 clusters. I mean, that's like running a couple light bulbs in the day, right? Like, that's really amazing to think about, right? And so, the fourth bullet that they were also very excited about, that we're dedicated to, as you can see through the Universal Blockchain Toolkit, is that we're collaboration focused, that we're able to work with anytime they're like, hey, there's a new project in town that's doing an application, or they have something that's, you know, interesting. Do you want to get on the phone with them? We talk to them. We're open book. We're happy to bring them into the cone, right? And again, we're not limited to just smart contracts, even though we did bring some smart contracting technology through our partner of Koinos in this. But we want to show that it's a precursor to more robust environments such as microservices that can tap really deep into those legacy systems, unlike smart contracts, which really, I think the combo is unbelievable. And they wanted us to include that like highlighted piece down below because they kept asking like, hey, so this is top secret level data. It's like, yes, it's top secret level data. Like, what about under quantum computing level attacks? And they're like, yes, we can handle that. You know, the key signing and some of these things aren't quite ready for quantum computing attacks, but it's on the roadmap. And that's the type of stuff that we're not worried about in the future, but everybody's, you know, their Department of Defense, they want to make sure that they're looking towards the future. So this is where I kind of omitted like probably 5 slides because I literally can't show you the work, but it's funny. Can't share the specifics, but I can share what exactly, well, it's funny, exactly is specific. I can share roughly what we have done. And it is a layer cake, right? We started off by really showcasing using, at the time, since we hadn't scored the data yet, because we had to go through a lot of stuff, clearance to get access to some of this mission data that's very sensitive. Ryle on our team built a demonstration that showed a Titanic passengers, right? A little tongue-in-cheek, a little macabre, but these Titanic passengers, all their details on the ledger as if it was mission data. And we showed if we started sending that data across these nodes and hand jamming it, throwing threat vectors at it, that it can't be hacked, spoofed. And this all can be fed into an alerting system that can show in real time, shut things down in real time, and so forth. And if you look at that, that's foundational. You got the security, right? So then the next thing that we showed them is like, hey, here's how to effectively use smart contracting to be able to take all the constituents within the multi-domain, and there's about 5 entities when it comes to mission data, to be able to participate in their day-to-day without, unbeknownst to them, that they're actually feeding their activities into a smart contract that can bring forth automation. And automation is like the powerful term, because once we're able to know that the data is what it says it is, much like those cars on the road that don't need to go validate it up to the cloud, they can automate machine-to-machine activity. You can hit the brakes. That's an automation. Like, man, we got to hit the brakes because somebody's going to die, and the data is valid, knows that there's a problem. Hit the brakes, right? And so, so that's the second piece, is the multi-author smart contracting orchestration from mission data creation, modification, execution, all the way down to you know, reconciliation when it comes to the budget and getting paid for it from as a vendor. And what's cool about this is that the other thing that we completed is notarization, showing that all these different pieces have been notarized by our network, you know, who the people are, what has been done, and so forth. And what's very beautiful about the smart contracting piece is it actually removes work. You know, instead of us being like, all right, got to learn a new discipline, we actually are going in saying you actually only have to do 3 steps versus your 5 steps now. And so it's showing the value of the efficiency of this and the efficacy. That said, when we think about, you know, the automation piece, they won't even know that they're really using smart contracting blockchain technology. But all those notarizations can show us not only them all of a sudden a lens to be able to run an analytic analysis across these things, right? Like being able to do modeling against orchestration to see, hey, we did it this way this time, we did it this way this time. And we have notarized so many endpoints, we can actually start to run analytics to see that, like, oh, wow, this is a better way of doing it. So that's another one of those benefits. We also threw in a deposit of showing some Web3 capabilities of what's possible with using cryptocurrency, even though that's not part of this. We just felt that it would be almost a sin not to show them what's possible using cryptocurrency, even though I feel like they're still warming up to the idea of how to orchestrate either shadow tokens or publicly tradable tokens, security tokens, whatever those may be. But to me, I think that's the real holy grail, is when you start to bring crypto to orchestrate these things. And that's where everything is headed. The other thing that we've almost completed, we're almost there, is the integration into Kinemy. So Kinemy does the secure file storage, and they do it through encrypted sharding. I always say it's like taking a mirror and throwing it on the ground, and each piece of that mirror represents a piece of that entire chunk of data. and it is all notarized through the different versions of every time it is stored in whatever location. And as it's getting reconciled, they do it through a thing called a policy engine. So that way we're not kind of getting our hands slapped because we're only the communication protocol. We only focus on data in transit. Once it's in rest, we can't really stop somebody from doing something. We may be able to validate if something's been done, but it still doesn't give that level of security in those moments that data is in storage. So when we think about things that like the graph are doing to up-level IPFS, data storage is always going to continue to be a very big hot button. And so, of course, now that we've completed these elements, we're bringing them together. We're also working with Safinia on, as we've notarized those different pieces, to surface those in a UI. Even though we're not selling a UI, we know they're not going to absorb a UI. It's a lot better than looking at log file analysis or some terminal. It's a lot easier to say, okay, we're going to do this, and watch this is going to tell us that there was a penetration test that took place, and it either showed that there was a hack or we have true fidelity of the data. So we're going to give our final report, and I'll talk a little bit more on the phase 3 transition. So the Universal Blockchain Toolkit continues to be the focus, and this term is not something that it's just something I use to kind of like wrap people's heads around like what it means. And I know that like CGI has their own kind of flavor of this term, but it really means, blockchain is a team sport, right? Like we're here to collaborate and offer as much knowledge and share as much knowledge, because the more of us involved, the better. This isn't like software as a service, traditional like two email providers that are trying to fight each other to garner the market cap. Anyway, so as far as the phase 3 transition goes, well, first I'll talk about the Universal Blockchain Toolkit, and then we'll jump into that. But this Universal Blockchain Kit, I've already touched on this. There's actually more logos than what you see on here, but I'm not surfacing those for security reasons because they're not official yet. And we're courting CGI right now, and we're going to be making a formal announcement later this year. They're an agnostic solutions integrator, and if you tuned into our high def, which I've got a slide here, you could hear CGI talk about their vision of Constellation, how it fits into their larger vision, and this is paramount, right? If you think about, I snagged these slides from one of their public decks just to show why we're really partnering with CGI and why we're leaning into exploring the deepening of this partnership. They're one of the biggest solution integrators you may have not heard of, largely because they have a heavy hand in federal. And a lot of people don't really day-to-day hear about federal. But if you think about Accenture, Deloitte, some of those big names, they're up there with them, right? But they have, in my opinion, one of the better practices when it comes to federal. Constellation, we just can't be a federal contractor at this scale. It's not our bread and butter. That's not how we're orientated. However, coming from Oracle, I understand how to partner effectively with solution integrators to really scale that one-to-many vision. Okay, you got Constellation, then you got 7,000 dedicated professionals, right? I never want Constellation to be 7,000 employees, but who knows? Maybe someday we will be. But they're one of the top 100 Fed contractors, and that's really meaningful considering how many federal contractors out there. And they have over 100 clients, right? And they have a high on-time budget and project delivery score. So as you see, like their range of services and differentiators, I mean, this is a perfect fit for us. They're not only salt of the earth people, I really like working with them. They're all very kind and smart and calculated and cautious, which I really appreciate. But when we think about those other guys like Deloitte and Accenture Federal, I feel like they've put their toe in the water on some of this stuff. Whereas I feel like CGI built a deep end and they're swimming in it right now. They put resources against this because they see that the ship has sailed, that this is mission critical, and they want to be seen as an industry leader. So because of that, what I love about this slide is that this is really kind of a culmination of all the things that blockchain can better enhance. At some point, I can see them adding a circle or some underlying circle that's like shows that mesh network or that data fabric really plays a key role in providing a secure network to orchestrate a lot of the promises of these rather siloed technologies in unison. So just wanted to give them a shout out and kind of explain why we're leaning into them and why this phase 3 transition is so meaningful. We right now are exploring multiple different opportunities, and we're just trying to figure out the best way to move this forward without it slowing us down as a core company, since we have so many things we have to focus on. And so with that, if anybody hasn't seen it, I think this is a really great kind of capstone of how we see the world, our ethos, our thesis of all these folks that are involved in this team effort. And there's more than this, but these are some folks that were wonderful enough to participate in High Def 22 in the morning before High Def After Dark kicked off. But yeah, if you haven't had a chance to see this and you are interested in more of the details around like, well, what the heck is he talking about with mesh networks and all this stuff? And how do these people really feel about the government's appetite around this? What are the hurdles? How are you guys going about it? It's a really great piece that I encourage you to check out. So moving on to some notable events that Constellation is involved in specific to this space. I'm really, really excited for my phase 3 transition briefing and our phase 2 achievements briefing in the fall here, coming up actually in just about 6 weeks' time at the NDTA, or National Defense Transportation Association. So this is US Transcom, AMC, like all the folks that we've been working with. This isn't like a public event, this is federal, right? And so really looking forward to this. Also proud to say that we got chosen to participate in a coveted panel with the Postgraduate Naval Academy. I think the Navy is very interested in this stuff, really focusing on the intersection of distributed consensus technologies and national security. I mean, when they saw Constellation, like, wow, you guys have been doing some amazing work. Again, it's like all of a sudden everybody's light bulbs are going off and I'm getting all these calls like, we all need blockchain. How do we talk more blockchain? And so I want to give a shout out to Altif, not only for being an amazing co-founder and a friend, but a lot of folks may not know over the last 6+ months, he's been my partner in crime in really handling Space ISAC. Unfortunately, since I am going to be in St. Louis, he's going to be in Colorado Springs, in which we are the co-chair of the Blockchain Community of Interest. He's conducting a couple roundtables at the Value of Space Summit. And it's just awesome, the names that are involved in this and the passion. It's crazy how many people are really into space and how just, I think the general private sector doesn't think about it very often, but it is a hot space. And so big shout out to Altif to represent and drive this, and no better person. So with that, I just want to get into a level set, what all this is and what all this is. I thought it would be better to start with this isn't what this is, so it didn't end on the isn't side of things. But what this isn't a fast transition. Decentralized infrastructure takes time and requires a lot of discovery. And I like using the cloud transition as a great example, right? We talked about it on that high def panel. If you really want to see how hard it is to make a transition, even if the technology is like the golden goose, look at the cloud transformation. I mean, they've been kicking this off. I mean, they've been really pushing for this for the last, I think, 6 or 7 years, and it's still in motion. And that's an area that already had momentum in the private sector, right? And so it just takes a lot of time to make this transition, even if the technology is a real silver bullet in many ways. So if you look at that, that gives you an idea of how this transition is going to take place and why we need to have those strategic, amazing partners as showcased from those faces before. This isn't the beginning of Constellation becoming a prime contractor. I think I've nailed that. Like, we want to stay in our swim lane. We're an infrastructure solution. So thus the strategic one-to-many partnerships are a focus so this can scale. This isn't our only focus, but a binding utility for expanded engagements, right? And so we are not a point solution, nor are we a traditional licensable software company. This has been one of the things in the phase 3 transition that's made it very untraditional and interesting. And so how we transition may not be the most traditional way, because largely when working with software companies, they have a very clean licensable solution that's SaaS-based, that's a provider, they go through FedRAMP, all that stuff. We aren't that company. We're open source. They can run it without us even knowing it for many ways. So, and another thing, what this isn't one blockchain to rule them all. We're going to continue to be dedicated to open interoperability of other chains. So while Constellation is going to play a massive role, don't get all huffy and puffy if you see other blockchain projects getting involved, because we all can work together, and Constellation is playing a very foundational, meaningful role. But what this is, we have a seat at the head of the table. When federal thinks blockchain, they now think Constellation. This took 3 years of every week, it feels like, working on this and really making sure I formed those relationships and sold them on the belief of not really just our technology, but the team that's behind it. Because these folks it's a relationship business, is the DOD. They're a lot more relationship driven than I would say in the commercial sector. So when I was up there in front of these generals multiple occasions, I wasn't just selling them on Constellation, our amazing community, and all the things we've achieved. I was selling them on Benjamin Diggles and my belief in this, right? And so now when somebody's, you know, in the throes of some program office, they're like, what do we got going on blockchain? We are listed in many internal portals, as well as a water cooler talk, if you will, as the federal blockchain solution to certainly take the strong look at that has momentum. We have proven validation with the world's biggest customer, the world's largest defense budget. I'm not crazy proud that we have the world's largest defense budget that's 4 times China's, but you know, when we're talking $700 to $800 billion yearly, that's meaningful. Like, that's in traditional business, that's a hard customer to break into. So I'm very proud of that. We recently were told by our contacts that we're the only DLT infrastructure company to not only secure a direct to phase 2 contract, but also be nearing successful completion with the US Air Force. I would put an asterisk next to this because I think we are, but we should be proud, right? Sure, the reason why this is nuanced is, Simba has landed a couple amazing contracts, but let's be honest, they're what's it called? A canvas-based solution for smart contracting on top of Ethereum and Stellar. So they're an application layer on top of these other infrastructures. We are an infrastructure company, so we're really trying to provide those new standards for how these agencies communicate. And this is the beginning of vigorous state channel expansion and the deepening of meaningful partnerships. And I wouldn't even say the beginning. I think a little bit more of the intermediate phase, but we're starting now to really grow with it. As we all know, developer documentation just came out a few weeks ago. So that meant that a lot of these engagements required us to kind of be like Batman and Robin. It's almost kind of like those, driving school where they have 2 steering wheels in a car. Well, now that documentation's opening up, we're able to like give people the keys to the car that doesn't have 2 steering wheels, right? And that takes a lot of effort and relief of our engineering group that doesn't have to handhold or be in the tranches with these groups. So that's why I do believe this is the beginning of that state channel expansion. That said, I'm putting pressure on all of you and anybody that sees this that has an application that is looking to build on top of Constellation, get in the game. If you think about it, there's a lot of contracts that have been won in phase 1s and in phase 2s for Ethereum, but these are applications built on top of Ethereum. I think a lot of infrastructure solutions have some form of an application that they don't even own that are being participated or that are participating in the federal government because somebody decided to write a proposal and they got in. I'm going to give a shout out to Mike over at DISC. He's putting a proposal together to get an SBIR ramped up, and he's putting Constellation in there as their backbone that's validated through this effort. So you don't have to bring in that extra element of saying, hey, I now have to educate you that this is a trustworthy solution. You can just say, hey, it's trustworthy because they've already done it, right? Like, so now we can focus on, hey, what areas do we want to impact within your workflows that blockchain can contribute. So I'm very passionate about competition getting in the space, especially that I really would like to see people using HTTP in hard to use scalable environments because the time is now. So with that all said, I do want to kind of make sense of this because I saw some dust kick up. I'm no longer on LinkedIn. I killed that platform. That was my final social platform. I did it as a gift to myself on my birthday. Nothing funky going on. I built a web page that I've started to optimize on SEO so that if somebody types my name, they know I'm not a joker, I'm a real person. But I decided that I was tired of 95% of the noise and 5% of the signal and what they're doing with my data. But this also is a mantra of me kind of sunsetting some Web 2 activities and getting ready for Web 3. I want to give a shout out to Scott from Aurora. That was part of our flight program too. Scott is building a competitive solution to LinkedIn, and I'm going to be first in line to beta test it and start putting that stuff in a Web3 environment. I believe in exposing what we've done, but I want to do it in a new world versus holding on to the LinkedIn. So nothing weird going on there. But I will say, this is something I do want to make sure that we all understand as far as the phase 3 transition, is that there's going to be a lull, right? Things are going to slow down for a minute as we ramp back up, just like from phase 1 to phase 2. And the government's fiscal year kicks off on 10/1, so October 1st, which means that usually the end of the year, they don't get their ducks in a row. They don't even get their ducks in a row until 14 days after the beginning of the new year. And that's not a knock, that's just culturally how they work. So I'm going to be taking some time off in Q4 just to recharge my batteries because I'm not going to lie, this has almost put me in the grave. It's been really, really, really hard, but I'm very proud to have been leading this effort on behalf of not only the company, but myself, my vision, as well as the community. So just know that this is going to have a transition timeline, and that's okay. These things do take time. We're not even a 5-year-old company, and we're making history in ways that I actually never thought was possible. So I couldn't be more proud. With that, we're getting to the grand Constellation 2.0 updates, but I wanted to just go ahead and show off some of the new website stuff because this is extremely important to me. Very, very proud of this. I want to give a shout out to Christy and Chad, Gina, Andrea, Carrie. I mean, everybody that played a role in this. A lot of people put their hands and hearts into this, and it's taken a long time because we courted a lot of agencies that just kept coming back and they didn't get it. And that's not a knock to them, but it also just shows the newness of this industry. And so we had to take it on internal with everything else going on. So I just want to give those folks a big shout out because I think they did an absolute bang up job and I couldn't be more proud. So here's some highlights before I show a couple of things. And just to come out of the gate, it's launching tomorrow, September 1st. You'll be able to, test drive it. And I say test drive it because we certainly want feedback and it is a work in progress, but it is a much, much more sophisticated up-level brand, which really, I think, mirrors the growth and the evolution of what our company is becoming. It's easy to navigate. It's got like these 3 very basic top-level nav buttons. Learn takes you to educational materials. We're going to stay dedicated to a flight program for businesses and Datapreneur Academy for individuals, and that's in progress. We're taking in that intake for those that are interested. Now we have the build section that's really robust with the developer hub, developer docs, and GitHub. Of course, we have our products that you can explore, whether that's Hypergraph, the Stargazer Wallet, Lattice Gateway, or the Door Traffic Miner and the DAG Explorer, all beautiful stuff. And then as well as explore the ecosystem of partners. We're going to continue to build out those projects that matter and highlight those that are really bolting onto HTTP in a meaningful way to create true adoption within our ecosystem. So tomorrow we're going to be launching it, but just to show you a couple of pages, what you'll notice when we think about this Constellation 2.0 or this transition, the Mr. Diggle shaving his head, we're talking about really focusing on developer support, really focusing on building and utilizing our network because it's now possible. Redefining Web3 interoperability with L0 consensus, secure, feeless, decentralized, and infinitely scalable. Those are some big promises that we have to keep, and we're very excited to say that we can. And so while this is just kind of a static screenshot of the page, I took another one. Again, I can't even tell you how this puts a tear in my eye, because you got to imagine nobody wants mainnet 2.0 more than Mr. Diggles. No one. I'm the one that's out there working with these companies that are like, hey, we want to start building, we want to start doing this stuff. It's like, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. So if anyone's frustrated, you're not more frustrated than me, but guess what? This is bigger than frustration. This is bigger than that. This is about digging in and really looking towards the future. Again, we're not even 5 years old and we've achieved more than I thought possible, And so I'm so excited to see this section on the website. Almost gave me a tear because hello world, here we go. And there's another section I'm also very proud of because I want to remind people I feel like we're the most vertically integrated ecosystem in the market. I mean, when you have the robust nature of a scalable HTTP mixed with that feeless transactions, and then you add in things like our wallet and Lattice and the Door Traffic Miner, and then we have our flight program to educate folks. We have the ability for enterprise tooling and that feeless transaction fee. I mean, it's tough to look away. We have some of the biggest tech, and we're now really starting to have our coming out with it. And so this is a section that you'll find on a tab on the homepage. So very excited about that. So here we are to the final section that I know has caused a little bit of Lord of the Flies energy with the community. I understand that folks are really pent up. A lot of people have bet their, kind of bet the farm or their beliefs in this. They really believe in it. And so anytime expectations aren't met, people get a little uncomfortable. I totally understand that. That said, please understand, there's a lot of variables here, right? We're talking a lot of stuff when it comes down to making sure we integrate with exchanges and so forth, right? Making sure the stability is there, the scalability over time so that we ensure that we have as little crashes as possible. So these are things that are variable rich that cause us to make sure that we double down. That's why we've always been really big on regulation. We've always done what's right on behalf of the community. And so let's go through a couple of timelines here before we dive into mainnet. Beginning September 1st, the weekly Stargazer wallet upgrades. You can follow Stargazer Twitter for those. This means we're starting to bring on new protocol support for different tokens. I'm not going to say what they are, so that way we can have an enjoyment in the unveiling. But the Stargazer wallet continues to get more robust, continues to support more. I just want to make sure, and I know Ben had mentioned this at High Def, this is not a MetaMask competitor. We're not trying to compete with MetaMask, but rather build a wallet that is agnostic and really supports the HGTP ecosystem and the L0 projects that are building on top of it. September 1 through 3rd is the final DTM flash sale. And I highly encourage you to take advantage of this. I know that these devices aren't necessarily the cheapest on the market, but for what it's worth, I personally bought 3 of them because I'm so excited about it. And I didn't get a $500 discount, but that's okay. So I encourage you to take advantage of that discount. This will be our final flash sale. And then in September 14th, GennyCo Hypergraph Hour is taking place. I know we had a false start back in the day. That's okay. If you haven't seen the video that's just recently been released in the last, I think, 24, 48 hours around GennyCo, it's about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. Really beautiful, amazing video that encapsulates the vision of GennyCo. And I can't think of too many projects that better exemplify bolting the real world to Web3 than GennyCo. I'm so excited for this. So it's worth the wait. September 21st, Lattice 2.0 Hypergraph Hour and white paper release. We haven't forgot about Lattice 2.0. It's been on the cooker in the background, and it's beautiful. I've seen it. It's absolutely gorgeous. But there is one thing I want to mention that is a transition from the website today to the website tomorrow. Our view around this thing called the Hypercube was always the vision that we didn't know was Lattice. And so Hypercube essentially is Lattice. Everything leads to Lattice, right? When we think about the Datapreneur program and people trying to understand how to own their own data and what that means, they need to be educated on what that stuff is. Not everybody is Web3 crazy like the communities that have been early in this, right? With that, projects need somewhere to go to launch on a launch pad, or they want to get exposure, they want to generate liquidity or new wallet holders, or folks want to use their Door traffic miner and see what their rewards are. My point being is, if it doesn't matter if it's building state channels or L0 minting, it all leads to Lattice. And so that's why we've sunsetted the term Hypercube, which may come back because I really like it. But that's what the portal of Lattice really is supposed to be. And on September 27th, we'll be launching that along with the GennyCo on the launch pad. So get excited for this. And here's the drum roll. Mainnet 2.0 launch and Hypergraph Hour with the updated roadmap is going to be on September 28th. So I want to apologize that I know we had a weird slide snafu during High Def that showed end of August, and people really got their heart set on it. That said, shit happens, right? We made a mistake on that slide, shouldn't have been there. It's always been Q3. And so I'm very proud of this, and I want you guys all to get really excited as well. So I encourage when folks show up to the Hypergraph Hour, bring a cocktail of your choice, or a coffee or whatever, so we can toast. This is going to be one of the biggest moments. So if we think about Lattice 2.0 launching on September 28th, and then Mainnet 2.0 on Lattice 2.0 on September 27th, Mainnet 2.0 on September 28th. This is going to be bananas, and it's Andrea's birthday on September 29th. So it's the trifecta, which is really cool. So just to leave us on this slide, if you haven't seen this video, please do. I think, and I really appreciate the tensions around Mainnet 2.0. Like I said, it's paramount to me. And I can't wait. That said, what I love about this piece is it takes you out of that myopic box checking, even though I know it's an important one, and it allows you to zoom out and see holistically all of the efforts that we've made and all of the consistent deposits that we've put one foot in front of the other. And so personally, I do take it sometimes personal when the FUD is fed around, because I put my guts into this. And so is everybody that works at Constellation, and so have the people that used to work at Constellation. And so I really am proud of this video because it highlights that so many things have taken place, and we're continuing to do what's right on behalf of the regulators, on behalf of the government, on behalf of the token holders and the community, and on behalf of the business, so that it's healthy. So I just want this to be one thing that gives you a little bit of, I guess, a shock to, like, wow, if you haven't seen it, this is just one of those really great pieces. So with that, the last thing I want to say is today marks my 11th wedding anniversary with my wife, Jenny. I just want to thank her, because I'm sure the word DOD is a 4-letter word at this point. She has been my rock and has been an amazing support. So shout out to her and to our 11-year marriage. And don't forget to stake your DAG in the next couple of days. I know that starts tomorrow at some point. And yeah, get pumped. I couldn't be more proud and more excited about any of this. And I just really appreciate everybody's support. and pumping me up through this, this entire journey. So with that, that concludes today's Hypergraph Hour. Thank you so much for everybody joining.